In Quebec, the system of quotation will arrive in probably this year's for different buildings.
Oh, you think
in
it's
Montreal is already there?
really?
Yeah, we need to declare our energy consumption.
Have you been thinking about buying your first rental property for some time, or do you already own a bunch of properties? Well, fellow investors, you found the right location to listen and learn from others' successes. Welcome to The Very Real Estate Effect with your host, Axel Monsaingeon.
Hello, and welcome back to the Very Real Estate Effect podcast, a show dedicated to real estate investing right here in Quebec. And today, it's a pleasure to have Mr. Philippe Hudon, the president of Akonovia, a company specialized in energy efficiency and decarbonization, on the show. Hi, Philippe. Welcome on.
Hello, Axel. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So I'm glad you're here. We're going to be talking about energy efficiency, decarbonization, and everything that's been happening in the real estate world when it comes to being better with our energy. But before we do, I just want to remind everyone, thank you for sharing this episode with a friend who could benefit from this conversation. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. It helps us reach more people like yourself and put out great content. So, Philippe, you are president of the company.
Yeah, and the founder.
And the founder. So how do you get started in all this?
In fact, I'm interested about energy efficiency since the cégep. So 20 years ago when nobody was speaking about energy efficiency. So I started to read about that and develop some competencies. Mm-hmm. And after that, I work for a company, but I want to do more for energy efficiency. So I started a company 10 years ago. And yeah, we just celebrate our 10 years in November.
Wow, 10-year anniversary, and I think you're about like 40, 45 employees now?
No, we just merged with another company. Right now we are 90, so...
What?
Yeah.
90?
Yeah, in 10 years.
Whoa, huge growth. Congratulations.
Yeah, with a good team, yeah, we can do good stuff.
Well, and it's also that you're in an industry where there's a lot of demand.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and it's... In fact, we just started energy transition. We we talk about energy efficiency since a while, but in fact, the real transition start...
couple of years ago. Yeah. And so, so before we go into it, I just want to be very clear for those who are listening, because I don't want to assume they understand what it means. So let's just define energy efficiency and let's define decarbonization. So we all start on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, energy efficiency is just saving energy, natural gas, electricity, or managed power at the same time. And decarbonization, in fact, we cannot succeed to decarbonize. In France, they use low carbon buildings. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, the important thing is to reduce the emission of GNG gas. It's based on refrigerant and natural gas or things like that.
Okay. And it's interesting that you're quoting in France, because different parts of the world are sometimes ahead of us or behind us when it comes to this transition. And that's something that we'll get to talk about a little bit, maybe a little bit later in the episode. So you started 10 years ago. You said you were passionate in energy efficiency from your cégep days.
Yeah.
And then, so why?
Why? It's probably my value. And I think the environment is important. And I don't know if we start talking about energy, not climate change at this period, but yeah, I was already conscious about that.
Okay. Yeah. And so then you started by advising people, owners, companies on how to save energy? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, my first internship I did in the market, it was around geothermal system. And since the cégep and after that, the university, I always work in energy efficiency. So, yeah, just build my skills with all these experiences.
Okay. So if we dive into the industry a little bit more, so obviously the price of energy has been rising everywhere, whether it's electricity, gas, solar, and all this.
It's still cheap in Quebec.
It's still very cheap in Quebec comparatively to the rest of the world, compared to the US, compared to all this. But why is it becoming so important now, and why are real estate owners and investors a lot more concerned about it?
Yeah, the change will come in different situation. First, Hydro-Quebec, we used to have a lots of energy, a lots of powers, and right now is not the case anymore. So we in the news, we see Hydro-Quebec say we just accept few blocks of power for companies, industrial companies, but right now we don't have any more power. So the first thing is the availability of energy. The other part is the energy costs and the carbon taxes in Quebec or in the rest of Canada. Of course, this part will the price of energy will be higher in the next years. And the third part is around is the financial sector, and they are looking to reduce the GHG impact on the sheets. So bankers need to add the carbon impact on the balance sheet, and there's already they had some pressure on the builders.
Okay, so from a financial point of view, I just want to make sure we understand. So that means that banks and financial institutions are being asked to invest in or to lend money to projects that are more efficient?
Yeah, in fact, big companies will need to add these informations to the balance sheets in the next probably 2 years. So if you buy some stuff from other company, you will bring the impact of carbon on your bill. So it will have an impact, and you will need to have targets to reduce the GHG emission.
Okay.
And the other part, the bankers will need to have access to your climate risk of your buildings. So if you need to do the analyze based on 1.5 degree higher, 3 degrees, 4.5 degrees, and what is the risk of flood, of hurricanes, of different risk of your buildings. So if you are close to a place can be flood, probably the value of your building will be lower.
Okay, well, this is really interesting. So now let's take this at a very basic example. Let's say a listener here, he's got a sixplex in Hochelaga Maisonneuve.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for him?
Is the banker will probably need the information in the next 3 years and do the analysis of, I think it's 10 points of climate change risk.
Okay.
And for him, if some risk is high probability, it will be harder to find investment to give.
Okay, so obviously, let's say if he's in a flood zone or close to a flood zone, then the bank doesn't want to finance him because there's too much of a risk that the place gets flooded or the basement gets flooded and all that.
Yeah.
What else could there be in terms of risks?
This part is about climate risk. The other part is if you have a building with a huge carbon impact, banker will not be interested.
Okay.
Right now, some bankers, if you've got a building with high carbon impact, the vice president need to approve the loan instead of because it's considered like a high risk building.
Yeah. So those who still have, let's say, a gas furnace.
Yeah, exactly. So the energy efficiency used to be an opportunity to have a better profitability of your building.
Yeah.
And right now it's changed to be a risk for not your profitability, is to find financing.
Yeah. Okay, so that still creates opportunity for those who are able and willing to acquire it now and then optimize, get rid of the old furnace, put a more efficient source of heating, and improve the building.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, but right now it's hard to capture the plus value when you do this work. Of course, you've got the plus value based on lower cost of energy, but if you did the transition of your building based on a brown building to a green building, right now it's hard to capture this value because at the end, your building is less risky, so it's supposed to have a better value on the market. But right now it's hard to find how to capture this value.
Yeah, Mr. Market isn't really recognizing this value yet.
Yeah, and the same thing for new buildings. It's hard right now to capture this value, and the firm they evaluating the value of the building, they know there's a plus value, but they cannot figure out how to calculate it or how to integrate it in the value.
Okay.
So it's why we just, when I said we just start the transition, is because of that. We know the market is going there. We know the brown buildings will have a risk for the financial, but at the same time, we cannot capture the plus values. So some developers has this vision to develop greener building, but when I ask the question, how you can finance it or how you create the value, it's more about the vision, and they know it's the good decision, but it's hard to figure out how to add it in the value of the building.
Yeah, the financial doesn't back it yet.
No, but at the same time, when I discuss with developers right now, we start to do slime 2 pro forma of building. So if you get a brown buildings, probably the bankers right now are agreed sometimes to add a lower cap rates for greener buildings. Sometimes they had a longer period for the financing period. So when you had this this thing in your pro forma is looking better, and for greener building you can go and build it.
Now, before the episode, you and I chatted on the phone, and you mentioned that there's now a number of studies being done by large operators, some that I won't name, but that everybody knows in Quebec, that own thousands of units, have invested hundreds, if not billions of dollars into the Quebec real estate landscape. Now, for them, energy efficiency is becoming extremely relevant because that's millions of dollars a year in cost, but it's also the social responsibility. So how is your firm helping and advising them in making day-to-day decisions to be able to transition, because this doesn't happen overnight?
Now, the first thing is we need to be agree with the team of the developers, the financial, the construction team. What is the risk of the energy transition? What is the perspective of energy costs? When we had for 10 years or 15 years, with the energy model, we do a projection of the energy costs and what is the impact on the interest rate, what is the impact on the rents. So when we had all the information and we do a kind of analysis of risk or financial analysis, we can build this value. So it's more like just this building or this system bring this savings. It's more about the projection, and with the higher equipment we can get a good value in the long term.
Okay.
So when we did the study with FTQ about Génération 1.5, we developed this analysis, and the conclusion is for this kind of buildings, but the conclusion is the same way, but probability the numbers will be different, but it's the 45% of financial impact during 10 years for brown and green buildings. So the ground.
Sorry, what does that mean? What's that 45% difference?
44% is
the difference in cost and energy?
Not cost, is the in French is flux monétaire, the cash flow, yeah.
Cash flow difference?
The cash flow difference during a period of 10 years. So if you take a brown building, you will have probably less, for the rents will be a bit lower, 1% lower, or probably more because you have less activity. It's the same thing for assurance costs. So when you add all this risk, the probability is the cash flow will be lower than 15% on 10 years that expected, because insurance and other people will be more sensitive about greener building. And if we compare with the green buildings, all this risk is an opportunity. So at the end, when you invest at the beginning, of course, you will need to invest more at the start. Yeah. But after that, you will protect your buildings for every risk, because it will be already positioned for the energy transition.
Okay. You've used the term a few times, the brown building. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure. Can you help us? Brown building and green building, can you define?
Yeah, it's a kind of a simplification. I don't want to do greenwashing, but it's the brown building is a building with a low performance of energy efficiency. Yeah. So bad building envelope, bad efficiency of systems, and use some fossil fuel or the thing like that. Okay. Instead of greener building is more energy performing building.
Okay, and it's usually also relative to your construction, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the worst building is the building that are quite new or had been renovated, and they are not. They don't. The people doesn't invest in energy efficiency or decarbonize because they not amortize the system, so they cannot invest anymore. So they shut the possibility to do the transition for this building.
Okay.
So for this kind of building, for me as an investor, I will not touch it. I prefer a building that we need to do a big retrofit, and this is a good opportunities.
Yeah, because then you can properly position it for the next 15 years instead of acquiring something that was built 2 years ago on which you have no ability to improve.
Exactly. So a lot of people doesn't take this, understand enough to sometimes they invest in energy efficiency and they take the good decision, but at the end, if you didn't do the transition about decarbonization or lower carbon, your active is your building is probably risky.
Now you mentioned at the beginning Europe and France and all this, and as we said, like different countries are in different places on this, and it's usually relative to their national cost of energy, right? The higher the energy, the more incentive there is to save.
Yeah.
Now, you recently came back from a trip in Europe. I was going to say first, like business or pleasure, and if it was business, what is it that you go and learn over there?
First thing, in France, the energy cost is 5 times higher than here. The other thing is the regulation. In Europe, the culture is more regulation than in North America. In North America is more the financial sector. They add pressure on people to change. But at the same time, in France, there's a system of quotation for the building for energy performance and the carbon impact exists since a while. I don't know, 10 or 20 years. And they need to declare and have this thing in the buildings or at the door.
The rating.
The rating.
And when people try to sell the building, they also need to do what's called the diagnostic to be able to rate the energy efficiency so that the new buyer knows what he's getting into.
Yeah, and the other thing right now is a residential building. You cannot rent or sell the building if your quote is too low.
Yeah.
So it's a huge financial risk.
Yeah.
In Quebec, the system of quotation will arrive in probably this year's for different buildings.
Oh, you think
in Montreal is already there?
Really?
Yeah, we need to declare our energy consumption for different size of buildings.
Okay.
And for all the Quebecs, it will arrive depending of your size or your categories of the building, will arrive in the next 2 years, 3 years. Every building will have a quotation and will need to show the quotation at the door. So if you're in the AAA building and your energy performance is not good, I'm not sure I will be happy to arrive in my building with a quote of D and I pay a high rent.
Okay, this is really interesting what you just shared, because that's a massive business opportunity for companies like you who are gearing up and getting ready, because once this become mandatory, the phone's going to start ringing. Just like we do building inspections, soon we're going to have to do energy efficiency inspections, and I mean, that's a whole new industry that's being created.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said a bit earlier, the market changed to energy efficiency like an opportunity to reduce our costs, to a risk for companies. Like probably you will find the loan early harder to find. Already bankers start to ask for your impact of carbon, and the other thing is the system of quotation. So a lots of triggers will arrive. We don't know which one will have more pressure, but of course a lots of trigger will happens in the next years.
That's huge, and wow. Is that why your company merged with another one? I mean, that's
it's to help companies to implement systems, and of course,
to scale.
Yeah, but the other part is we had a lots of I read a lot about financial thing around decarbonization because a lot of people understand the technical part, but to bring technical part to financial risk, it's another business. So a company like EY, KPMG understand about ESG policies or things like that, but to bring it like on the floor to understand what technically what we can do, it's another competencies. So we try to bridge the gap between the financial market and the technical market.
That's really interesting. So do you work with some of those big four consulting firms? Because they, as you said, they clearly have an expertise on the financials and on the risk management, but they don't understand as well as you do the technical. So how do you bridge that gap?
I don't know why they don't call us, but
I was going to say, like, you should be on speed dial and be like, hey, let's do this contract together because we don't have the internal expertise.
Yeah, right now I work a lot with probably the investor in a big company, and as well with big owners.
Okay.
So I'm working with the board. I'm not working with the operation team.
Yeah.
So because they need the information and they need to understand the risk.
And as you said, like in working with the board instead of maybe the technical team or director of operations, like there's also inherently a bias with maybe the board wants to know because they represent the owners, but then the technical team and the management team may feel at guilt. And so there is an inherent desire to not, I wouldn't say not cooperate, but it puts them at risk, even though they're not necessarily responsible for it. But in planning for the future, owners need to know.
Yeah, and right now it's really hard to take a decision around energy or your HVAC system because it used to be easy. You used to just have a look on the paybacks and it's good or not.
Yeah.
Right now is what is the risk, what is the impact of the carbon, and so it's why we for big owners we develop a matrix of decision. Make sure they can take the good decision for all buildings they own.
So, very interesting.
Yeah, but it used to be really easy, and right now I understand why they cannot. It's hard to take a decisions, and I'm in that every day, and I found it hard to take a good decision. It's why we develop tools that we can have a projection of cash flow for the buildings, for which kind of system they need to replace, and how we can transform this replacement as an opportunity.
Yeah. And as you said, sometimes what's difficult is that as a developer myself, I want to get the building up as quickly as possible, and I want to do it with the least amount of money. And I want the best quality building at the same time. And so it's kind of a misalignment of incentives because the best building in the long run will cost a little bit more to build, but it will have a lower operating cost. It's just that it takes more capital up front, which we don't necessarily have.
Yeah, I had a discussion with the developers and I said, you will need to take a hit one time.
Yeah.
It's probably at the beginning or in 10 years when you will have to replace your systems. So at the end, one will be cost really higher. Replace systems during occupancy, it will cost a lot. But you need to take a hit one time.
Take a hit somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, you also recently opened an office in Europe. Huh? We can just kind of finish on this. And I was interested to see, like, in which way does the expertise go? Because they're ahead, but you also had shared that here we've had to be innovative in ways that they haven't.
Yeah, the market is really different. They around technologies and probably they are more sensitive about energy efficiency in Europe, and the codes or the regulation are more harder to achieve. But at the same time, here we don't have a regulation, so it's more innovation. We are better as commissioning, quality control of the systems.
Okay.
We are better in control systems. So it's really good to exchange competency between two countries. So for us, we're getting more stronger, and we can bring some stuff from France and export some expertise in France as well.
I think it's brilliant that as a company you're doing this, because you have everything to gain, because this is a global problem. It's a global situation, and we can all learn from how it's done elsewhere. So congratulations on doing this.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Before we wrap up, how can people get in touch with you and understand a little bit more about your company and your services?
Yeah, on our website, we have all the information. Contact me. So akonovia.ca, all the information is there. And I'm already present on the market. So I probably have the pleasure to meet your people.
Very good. So as you just heard, if you have any questions, you can go to akonovia.ca, look at all the services they offer, and go from there and just pick up the phone and have a conversation. That's how usually when it starts. So Philippe, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much.
And to everybody who's listening, as usual, share this episode with a friend who could benefit from this conversation. And in every situation, keep researching your market, make some offers. I'll talk to you next week. Thank you.